At the end of the day, your brand is what people say about you.
Getting initial traction and then just doubling down on that.
When people purchase your products, they're saying something very specific about themselves.
Welcome to On the Fly.
Welcome to the show, Clark and Barry. Delighted you can make it today. I'd love for you guys to give a quick intro to both of yourselves. Firstly, Barry, if you want to start off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dan. My role here at Wayflyer is to work with the enterprise team and specifically enterprise customers, both in understanding if they're a fit for our funding and if so, structuring deals and offers that are tailored to their needs.
And Clark, yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chief Financial Officer of newly minted Mutiny Brands. It's parent company to PillowCube, Stair Slide, Boulder Play, Cold Case Ice Cream, and we actually operate a couple service-based companies, Creatably and FinOps Advisors.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question. I was going to say, from your LinkedIn, it looks like you've got your finger in a lot of different pies. So Clark, if you want to just give us some information about your background in e-commerce. I know you were brought on board with PillowCube a few years ago when the company experienced a period of really rapid growth in Q4 2020. It's probably been a wild journey since then with a few other brands added. If you could just give us a little bit of background on that and just what you're seeing, what you've experienced, so people have an idea about your background in e-commerce.
Yeah, it's definitely been a fun ride. So I came from a traditional accounting and finance background. I did my undergrad in accounting, master's degree in finance, did my CPA license. So I spent a number of years in public accounting with Ernst & Young and Goldman Sachs. Back in 2017, actually, my primary business partner, Jay Davis, founded our first company, which was Creatably. At the time, I was working as a finance executive for a construction company, actually locally here in Utah. And we started Creatably. I came on as a founding partner just to kind of help get his financials in order, keep the company running, keep it well financed. And you know, pretty early on with Creatably. So Creatably primarily focused on long form video content, and it still does long form video content for e-commerce. And pretty early on, Jay kind of noticed like, hey, these companies are great. I'm helping them grow. But I suspect I could probably do this better. So hence the idea of PillowCube was formed. So in 2019, we founded PillowCube. It was a product idea that Jay had since he was 12 years old. And from PillowCube, you know, we started out in 2017, $0 in revenue. This year we'll probably do $50 million in revenue through PillowCube. Along the way, we've started our own brands. PillowCube and Cold Case Ice Cream are both internally founded brands. Stair Slide and Boulder Play are two acquisitions we completed over the last 2 years, one in 2021, one in 2022. Continue to operate Creatably, continue to do awesome long form video content, which I think is a relevant conversation piece to these, you know, rapidly growing companies. It's not just financing them correctly, it's also telling the story correctly. And then FinOps Advisors is actually a firm I founded before I joined Jay full time. To primarily service the finance accounting needs of e-commerce businesses. So we kind of brought it all together in-house and we formed Mutiny Brands as a parent company aggregator. And one of the reasons, you know, for example, on my LinkedIn, you don't see that is we focus on the brands, not necessarily on the parent company. But the journey went pretty quickly. I mean, from 2017 to 2020, end of 2020, I was still working a full-time job for that construction company. And then by the time we got to February 2021, you know, our monthly revenues were 2 to 3 million in our portfolio. And Jay and I decided it was time to quit my full-time job and come over and run things full-time.
My first question would be, how do you have time to do all this? But we could probably go on forever with that. That sounds like it.
Yeah, no, I can answer that pretty quickly. It's having a really good team, right? You know, I kind of say it as a joke, but this year as a finance guy, a hardened finance professional, right? Like more than a decade in as an executive in finance, I switched to a Mac. And for all the finance people out there listening, like they'll cringe about that. And the reason why I did that is so that I physically don't have the ability to dive in and edit spreadsheets for my team. And it's not that, you know, I'm too important for that. It's in order to have time, right? We have to have a good team that can manage those things. So it's one of the reasons we founded FinOps Advisors is a $50 million a year portfolio might seem huge, but from a finance team perspective, we only have a couple full-time employees, but then we have 10 to 12 contractors who we work with to do a lot of the groundwork to be able to manage all these entities. So, I mean, that's the secret to the time, is building a really good team and being creative about building the team. So, some of my people are 15-year finance veterans, but they only work 20 hours a month and they perform one specific task.
Wow, okay. I want to go back and go to the start of PillowCube, which feels to me like this was where you really kind of cut your teeth in the e-commerce world. Would I be right in saying that?
Absolutely. PillowCube is about 3 times our largest brand, be about 30 plus million in revenue this year. By far the most developed brand. So definitely it's where we're cutting our teeth still.
Take me through what happened in Q4 of 2020 when it was around Black Friday and things really exploded. And then from then on in, you kind of really had to think on your feet and how you were going to create a sustainable pathway to grow this company.
Yeah. So, having been a service-based company before, you have ebbs and flows, but you certainly don't have like direct-to-consumer retail. Anyone who works in this space knows how crazy Q4 is. In 2019, right, our founding year of PillowCube, we were kind of getting it off the ground, did our Kickstarter, right? We launched the Kickstarter. If you guys have kind of researched our products, it was the actual PillowCube, that tiny little square. Was our first Kickstarter, and it just blew us away that we did a 5-figure Kickstarter. So 2019, we didn't really have a Black Friday season because it was more Kickstarter, get the product out there, a ton of testing. And then 2020, we actually started our digital ad spend. And, having come from experiences of service-based companies, Creatably, me working at a construction company, it was our first Q4 Black Friday cycle. So, I don't think it's terribly unusual for a company who's, gaining a lot of social media traction to have a huge spike their first Black Friday, but that's really what it was. I think we talked about it before. The Black Friday weekend we did 2020 Black Friday. We did more revenue that weekend than we had done since inception in one weekend, 3 days. And so we were completely, from a supply chain perspective, unprepared. We had no full-time employees. I think we had one. She was a customer service agent. Everyone else was moonlighting. Jay, our CEO, me, the CFO, our COO, all of us were moonlighting, running PillowCube. We all had other full-time jobs. And it went from, 200K since inception sales to 500K over that weekend. So it was a pretty crazy struggle and rat race to get supplied. It took us 3 to 4 months to fulfill all those orders.
What was your first plan of action, really? Like, how did you sit down and say, this is how we're going to take this forward? What was your kind of plan of action to?
Yeah, in all startup worlds, your decision making kind of goes good, better, best. I'm sure you guys have heard that. And when you're in that level of startup, you're making what I would call good decisions to keep the doors open. So essentially, when you meet with suppliers, essentially when you're inundated with that many orders, right, you instantly have to turn around and go back to your suppliers and find out what your lead time is on fulfilling all those orders. And so a good decision would be, I need to get those orders fulfilled. A better decision would be, right, I need to get those orders fulfilled and hit a certain COGS percentage. And then a best would be factoring in the entire supply chain, right, the entire landed cost of shipping and freight and all that. So at that period in our business, right, it was good decision making, which is, who are our suppliers that can fulfill these orders within the next couple of months reasonably. So it was, essentially accepting a lot higher cost for inventory in the beginning than what a long-term sustainable business would do. But it's more, in the beginning, it's more about fulfilling orders, right? Because if you're an e-com business and you're 4 or 5 months backlogged, people aren't going to bother ordering from you. That's the whole point of e-com, is that they can get it right away. So right then it's essentially all hands on deck, picking up the phones, dialing every foam supplier you can find and finding out who's willing to work within your parameters and supply. For us, foam, right? That's the big, it's memory foam. That's the big bottleneck in our supply chain.
Said that you had pre-orders. Were you taking in revenue for the pre-orders and then hoping to fulfill them at a later date, or was that how you were funding this inventory?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're referring to Kickstarter, yeah, that's the whole platform of Kickstarter is doing pre-orders. So definitely Kickstarter is doing pre-orders, but over Black Friday weekend, yeah, we were certainly taking orders for stuff that we didn't have product for. And Yeah, I mean, and on Shopify. So Shopify was our platform. Shopify, we'll take people's money and deposit it if you can't fulfill orders. But after a certain point, right, they'll just start canceling their orders, and then you have to refund them. So,
and so how are you looking to fund these increased inventory orders?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, for us, I mean, maybe I can speak specifically to PillowCube's journey, right? And from a funding standpoint, in the beginning, funding was funded by pre-orders, essentially, right? We'd received all the cash over Black Friday weekend, and so we can instantly take that cash within a couple days because we're selling on Shopify, and then we can turn that directly into inventory. I would say as you start to scale a little bit more than that, right? That's just one anecdotal weekend where we're receiving a ton of orders over one weekend, and we have the next couple months to fulfill them. I would say where it becomes a bigger challenge is once we moved into 2021, and that's when I came on full time, is now all of a sudden we're doing 2.5 million a month in revenue, when before we were doing 200K a month in revenue. So that's where, some outside funding, and we actually, I know it wasn't a leading question, but at that time, what we actually did is we partnered with Wayflyer, and we took a revenue-based loan. They were able to kind of underwrite us based on how much sales we had done over Black Friday and over the first quarter of 2021, and kind of work with us together to do a revenue-based financing through Shopify. So essentially pulling funds from our daily Shopify revenue to pay it back, but get a large chunk of cash to go ahead and put the down payment on those orders for future months. Because that's where we started needing to make very large inventory orders where we didn't need to before, was once we hit Q1 2021. So we received a revenue-based deal from Wayflyer. We actually did 2 deals that year. One that was, I believe, $250,000, and then our next one was 1.25 million because of how fast we were growing. It kind of crazy that we went 5x on our second deal. And that really funded us through the massive growth period.
And did you look at any other types of funding during that? I know that period of time, I think it was early 2021, it was when things were going COVID crazy with e-commerce. I own a small brand myself, so I had like my busiest months there in like January, February 2021. I remember it well. And then things kind of changed dramatically really around Q2, Q3 for me. I'm not sure if it was the same for yourself.
Yeah, Q2, so April 2021 will forever live in infamy with anyone who's worth their salt in e-commerce, because that's iOS 14. That's when Apple decided to change their privacy settings, and it crushed a lot of e-commerce businesses. And I tell my partners every day, we're fortunate, despite the struggles that we have, we're fortunate just to be in business after iOS 14, the shift, because you had to go back to ground one on your advertising campaign and strategy. You had to go back to ground floor and completely restart your strategy, and start over. But we, being a CFO, that's one of the things that Jay and I talk about, right? Is he and I have been friends for a really long time, but I didn't come on to be a CFO because we're friends. I came on because I, brought that experience to the table. Of course, I've looked at all types of financing, debt and equity vehicles on both sides. Candidly, one of the reasons why Jay and I have never really heavily chased equity type financing is just because Jay is a creative mind, and the venture capital route never appealed to us. Doing like a seed or pre-seed round or an angel round, just having someone else with 40% control over our business that has draconian reporting rules, has always been something that's never appealed to us. I know that's a very popular route for a lot of people because debt scares them. But we've been much more friendly to debt since inception, just because, we'd rather deal with a Wayflyer or a commercial bank and the debt obligations and the debt service than deal with a venture capital firm that's trying to dictate for creative control over Jay. Jay is a very creative individual, has very heavy vision and strategy on where he wants to take things. And as the inventor, creator, CEO, right, he has every right to say, I don't want to share that vision with a group that's going to bring in some cash. So revenue-based financing is very popular, and it's very good for small e-com businesses because essentially you're being underwritten based on your revenue, and you're making repayments every day based on remittances from your daily cash flows. So it's obviously a very popular option to a small e-com. The best financing options are through commercial debt, but typically in the startup world, that's just not available, right? So if I were to go to a bank and get a line of credit or just a term loan of cash to fund my business, the problem with that is any bank, and as we're seeing with SBB, right, the failure of the banking system these last couple of quarters, is these guys, they need stable, profitable businesses that can continue to make their payments consistently to underwrite you. And so typically if you're a good startup and you're growing really quickly, a commercial bank won't touch you with a 10-foot pole. So you have to look for other options. We've looked at all options. We've taken actually a couple venture capital debt deals as well. Those are not as well known. Essentially, you can work with a VC firm where they do an entire debt instrument as opposed to an equity instrument. The cost of capital is pretty aggressive, but it's somewhere in between a bank commercial debt and a revenue-based financing. So that, on the other side, that's the downside, right? Revenue-based financing probably has the highest cost of capital depending on your repayment schedule. But it's very easy to come by. It's very easy to get underwritten. It's very easy to repay because it's just remitted from your Shopify account. And on the other end, a commercial deal has the lowest cost of capital, but it's the hardest to get. And then venture capital debt is somewhere in between. Typically, the upside to a venture capital debt deal is they'll have a 3 to 5 year AM period. And you have interest-only payments until after 3 to 5 years, they essentially assist you to refinance into a commercial deal. And so your debt service is very low on those, even though your cost of capital is high. And then the real risk in those is that you have to be eligible to refinance after 3 years. So you have to have a trajectory that's going to put you in EBITDA positive land by the end of your amortization period.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Clark, because it's something that we're seeing on kind of the new business side at the moment. Is a lot of companies who would have signed venture debt deals in 2021, early 2022, when business was going great and sales were going up. Yep. And now they've been paying interest only for the last 9 months, but sales haven't obviously been going the right way. So now they're kind of stuck with a lumpy piece of debt on the balance sheet. That makes it hard for the likes of Wayflyer or any other funding provider to provide capital to them. So they can be quite stuck. So I think, yeah, you're right with the benefits. It's kind of there's always cost benefits and benefits to each product. And there's all those different products out there at the moment. And as you touched on at the very start, so much has changed, whether that be cost of capital across the market going up or supply chains issues in 2022 or iOS in the e-commerce space. So it's really interesting to look at all the different products out there and really consider where you are in your life cycle before making that decision.
What seems to be kind of the most widely held perspective on the best type of financing amongst the e-commerce founders at the moment? Because, we've seen kind of a little bit of kind of revenue-based financing has got maybe a little bit of negative press recently, maybe from if they don't fully understand its best use cases. So I'd be interested to hear both your perspectives on that.
So as Barry indicated, a lot of things have changed in the last 3 years. Tons of things, right? The global economy even has really suffered the last couple of years. And so I would say short answer right now for a lot of e-commerce businesses, small ones, the best kind of debt is the one you can get. I was chatting with a guy and, he was dunking on a VC debt deal. My response was, well, is that the only option this company has? Because if it is, you have a binary choice. It's go out of business or receive a little bit extra funding and stay in business. And then it's a tough decision for the CEO and owners. Like, hey, do we believe we can turn that corner? And if we do, taking that deal, we can get. And to back directly to your question though, Dan, I don't think there's one type of product that's better than the others. I think a revenue-based lending deal probably gets a bad rap because people aren't great with numbers. And once they start actually sitting down, right, because typically a very common deal, right, is you get a fixed amount from it. Let's just call it 100. And then you're going to have a 17% daily remittance with a 17% fee. So the 17% fee is fixed. So I'm going to pay back $17 of that $100, no matter what, no matter how fast I pay it back. But if you're a rapidly growing business, you may pay that back in 20 days. Well, you start doing that math, right? Then your APR on that 17% fee is actually over 100% once you start actually doing the APR. But the thing is like, you should be, you should give yourself enough responsibility as a business owner, as a CFO, as a person in a position of power in this business to be able to do that back of the envelope math yourself and understand the risk reward of a deal like that. Because I've talked to a lot of small business owners as kind of running the FinOps advisors firm, right? My primary role there is to be a CFO advisory. Is like, yeah, you're going to pay 120% annual cost of capital, but what's the opportunity cost by not growing and taking advantage of grabbing market share? It's hard to quantify that, and it's hard to compare that. So I think that's why revenue-based financing gets a bad rap, is because, people are like, oh, it's a loan shark thing. They're not representing. And it's like, well, if it's a 17% daily remittance, a company offering you a revenue-based deal can't tell you when you're going to pay it back. They don't know what your daily revenues are going to be. All they can tell you is it's a 17% fee on a 17% daily remittance. If you happen to triple your revenue and pay it back in 10 days, how was the lender supposed to predict that? So it's an instrument that has its place. I don't think there's good and bad debt instruments. Venture capital debt as well also gets a really bad rap. And for me, again, the big plus side is the low debt service. I think traditionally in finance, people always say that without exception, commercial banking is the way to go, right? That's the best debt instrument, and VC debt is bad. Well, from personal experience, last year, the company we acquired, Boulder Play, the owner went bankrupt because he had a commercial line of credit and he missed like 2 payments. And the bank forced him into bankruptcy. So you want to talk about the downside to commercial banking is, they have a lot of flexibility on how harmful they can be to your business, and forced him into bankruptcy. A business doing $20 million a year, forced into bankruptcy over 2 missed line of credit payments because the bank was scared about his long-term viability. So, there's pros and cons to every single type of instrument. I would say that commercial debt is great because it has the lowest cost of capital. But certainly, in my opinion, commercial banks are the most skittish, and they will come down the hardest if they have a reason to believe you're going to default.
And yeah, I think, Clark, you're spot on in the point where you're referring to understanding the product and understanding what's important to you, and talking to the company or the funding provider that's going to provide you funding so that they can put together all the information and the right type of product that fits your needs. Like, so for example, with, let's say, percentage of daily sales, if a business is worried about paying that back too quickly, you could put caps in place that smooth out the cash flow. So if the cash flow being smoothed out over 6-month periods is important to them, that can be done in revenue-based financing. Likewise, in venture debt, if it's important for you to have these relationships with VC founders or the VC community, and you want to get in there so that, like you might be planning on having a raise in 6 months, and that's important to you. It's just understanding exactly what it is and making your own decision, as opposed to, like you referred to, like just looking at online and thinking, oh, loan shark, and then putting your nose up at it. Because when you speak to companies and they give you the advice and they feed you all the information, you can then make the best decision for your business.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think in today's economy too, right? There's, with what happened at SVB, right? There's a lot of historical institutional trust in traditional financing institutions, but hey, I'm sure glad I didn't have instruments out with SVB when that all happened, right? And on the other end, just like you said, Wayflyer was extremely awesome for us. And we actually, on our second deal, had a 7-month cap, just like you alluded to. So we'd actually make our payments like the first 10 days of the month because we'd hit our monthly cap because we were growing so fast.
I just want to take it back to kind of, because we usually keep these shows kind of under 30 minutes, and I want to give Clark the opportunity maybe to talk about the different brands that you're running at the moment. I know Pillow Cube is obviously on a great growth trajectory this year. You're doing really well. What's the kind of plans for the brand in general? What are you looking to do this year and into the next 2 years?
Yeah, Pillow Cube's in a really fun phase because we're in the product 2.0 phase. So we actually, our core product, we've improved supply chain enough that our original Side Sleeper Pro, that's the product that blew us up. It was the 12 by 24 square pillow.
Sorry, can I ask before you keep going? Do you ship to Ireland? Do you ship to Ireland? I'm a notorious side sleeper, with like proper neck issues from doing it.
In the beginning, when we started working with you, oh man, what's the name of your CFO's younger brother?
Robbie,
Robbie. So we shipped Robbie 4 pillows before, and I don't think he shared them with Yarmut and the other guys that did our account before. But after this, let's connect for sure. We'd love to get you guys some pillow cubes, because these are they're for people who sleep on their side. They can be life changing, and we never intended it to be that way. And that's kind of why it turned into this huge social media phenomenon, is like just changing a simple paradigm from, everyone's always done a pillow a certain way to, hey, we're going to do it just a little bit differently, is what exploded us. But so we're going to product line 2.0, which means our original $110 12 by 24 pillow is actually moving down to a $70 price point, because of improvements in our supply chain. And then our $110 product will be called our premium product, which will be a 14 by 28 molded memory foam pillow, a much higher quality product and a larger product. So we're really excited about that, right? The maturation of our product lines, just naturally being able to offer our clients a much better product at a competitive price. And then we're offering a full suite of side sleeping products. So we have a side sleeper mattress that's it was developed custom to go well with the pillow. The idea is that it offers more support on your hips and allows more push on your shoulders so that you can align your spine totally straight throughout your sleep experience. So this year we're pushing hard on product line 2.0. We're pushing hard on the mattress. I realize, we got a long uphill battle there. We're entering the mattress game when the entire market seems to be floundering. But we're smart about it, right? We're a pillow first brand, and already our $70 pillow has received awesome reception. Our conversion rate is up 30%. Our orders are up 30 to 40% just by lowering the price. And then we still have yet to release the premium product, which I think will have some huge LTV impacts for our clients who have all bought in at the higher price point, but they bought the old pillow. We're offering them, hey, come in, pay the same price, or get a discount and you'll get the premium pillow. So we're just expanding the product line, becoming, much more mature business. You'll be able to find us in Walmarts across the United States this year. Launching a knee pillow. One product we're really excited for is what we call the Travel Cube, which is like somewhere in between our original Pro product and our Sidekick. That's molded, and it comes with a compression bag so that you can actually like squish it down, put it in your carry-on and travel with it, because we've had such big feedback that like, hey, I need a product that I can travel with. This pillow is too hard to take around. I can't sleep on anything else. So that's where Pillow Cube's going this year. Really excited. I mean, depending on the reception in Walmart, I say, hey, we could be 30 million this year, but I mean, obviously depending on how sell through goes at Walmart, we could be, 50, 60 million this year.
I was going to say, what percentage of your overall revenue do you forecast coming from the wholesale deals?
Yeah, it's hard to say. This is our very first like big wholesale deal. So, we've been in mattress firms and other small like specialty bedding retailers, but never in like a Walmart. And so, the first test is just 2,500 units. We're entering the testing phase, and we'll see. I think it's going to be really popular. I think the things we know is our brand awareness is crazy high. Something like 1 in 5 Americans can identify our brand. But it being $110 entry point makes it really hard for conversion at that level of brand awareness. So going into Walmart with a $70 pillow that they don't have to pay shipping on actually allows us to open up a lot more of the middle class than was unavailable to us because of our price point.
Wow. And the 2 other brands as well. I saw the Stair Slide, absolutely ingenious idea. And just for someone who has 2 kids myself, 2 young kids, I can't believe I've never thought of it myself. Is that you're selling on Amazon with that one, or is it mostly done through its own?
No, so that we are yes and no. I mean, Stair Slide was the brand we acquired in July 2021. They were a client through Creatably as our ad agency, and working with the owner, we were able to make him an offer and complete the transaction in 2021. And that brand has grown. When we bought it, it had done $1 million in sales. And now it's kind of doing about 10 million a year in sales with one product. And it's crazy popular. That one's fun, but offers a whole different multitude of challenges. I think supply chain is the primary challenge, not essentially the consumer desire. Demand is really high, but because of supply chain, how big it is, the price point is about $70 per slide, and you need about 4 of them to operate them in your home. And so, that's where it presents challenges. So we've been refining the supply chain. We think we can get the price point down to about $50 per slide, and then much cheaper, if you're doing a bundle of 4. And that's where we'll get a lot heavier product adoption in Stair Slide. It's just big, right? Each panel takes up about 3 to 4 stairs. It's a genius product though. Everyone we've ever talked to is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wasn't the person who thought of it, right?
First thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it was an easy one from an acquisition standpoint, right? And that could be a whole other podcast conversation, right? Is what you look for in an acquisition target. But Stair Slide has all 7 of our criteria from a product standpoint.
It sounds like you've got a really good thing going on there with the complementary advertising agency, the FinOps, the brands. Really exciting time for you and PillowCube. And we wish you the best of luck here in Wayflyer with your launch in Walmart. I'm sure it's going to go exceptionally well. And thank you so much for joining us and having a good chat about your experience.
Yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it.